Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guides Podcast. I'm Keaton, and this is...
I'm Kyle.
But first, a word from our partners.
First up, we want to talk about Heather's Choice. If you go to the Heather's Choice website and use our code TheYoungGuides15 at checkout, you can get yourself 15% off site-wide. So go check them out. We got packaroons for snacks. We got dinners. We got breakfasts. We got a bunch of new recipes coming out to you guys. So head on over to heatherschoice.com at checkout. Use our code TheYoungGuides15 and get you guys something for your next outdoor adventure.
Awesome. For our next partner, we have Lucky Bug Lures, home of the Bingo Bug, Zombie Max, Fusion Extreme, Lucky Plug, F-Bomb, and Pike Bomb. They take conventional lures and change them up a little bit, and it helps your fishing and your luck on the water. Go check them out. www.luckybuglures.com. Go get yours today.
All right. Up next, we have Northern Knits. Emily up here in Anchorage knits wool hats and distributes them through her social media platforms. You can find her on Facebook or on Instagram. Her Instagram account is northern._.knits. And you can see some of the hats that she has in stock and order from there, or you can kind of get an idea of what you want, message her, and you can set something up to have a specific pattern or color scheme that you want in your hat. Keaton and I both have one. Well, I actually have several. Keep you very warm. They're very fashionable. They look great. They feel great. You'll look awesome if you wear one. So check her out, Northern Knits.
Next up, we have a friend, Matt, at Alaska Rod Co. He just released a new lineup of rods for the 2022 season. They have a lineup of 8 freshwater spinning rods with actions and power for anglers chasing big, aggressive fish. With lengths ranging from 6 foot to 9 foot, there are plenty of options for various applications and style. In a world full of mass-produced rods, Alaska Rod Co. makes sure that rods and services provide what other brands cannot. Rods built and tested in Alaska.
Matt also is coming out with a new line of fly rods. Alaska Rod Co. fly rods are built for harsh environments while maintaining the utmost level of craftsmanship. Right now, Alaska Rod Co. is 9-foot fly rods ranging from 5 weights to 8 weights. 10-foot single-hand rods, switch, and spare rods will be available late winter or spring. There's enough rod companies out there trying to build the next lightest and flashy rod. Alaska Rod Co. is here to build you a rod you can pass down generations. Fishing means many things to many different people. Alaska Rod Co. is honored to build you the ultimate tool that connects you to that meaning.
If you want to learn a little bit more about Alaska Rod Company, go back and check our previous podcast. We asked him several questions about his rods, his warranties. He does a great job at explaining everything and covering everything about his company. Also, if you have questions, you can always DM him or DM us and we can get you going in the right direction. So, Alaska Rod Co.
Finally, we want to say thank you for listening to another episode of the Young Guides podcast. If you can, head on over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a review and a rating. It helps us know that we're doing this for the right reasons, and you guys are giving us some great feedback already. You can also head over to Spotify. They now have a rating feature on the podcast there. So if you could let us know how we're doing, that would be great. It also helps helps us spread the word through you. But makes us pop up on the feeds wherever you listen to podcasts a lot more if you give us a great rating and a great review. You can also head to our website and contact us through that form if there's anything that you think we should know about, if you want to be on our show, or if there's something that we need to work on. You can also find us on Instagram, and same thing, give us some feedback, drop us a message, and we will get back to you.
With Instagram, make sure to also check our story. We before we do our podcast on Thursdays, we always have an option for you guys to ask questions to the people coming on our podcast. And we post a lot of stuff that we like to get viewers and people following us involved. So if you want to head on over, give us a follow and start asking questions and join in on the fun on our Instagram page.
Without further ado, here's the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guys Podcast. I'm Keaton, and
I'm Kyle. And today we have a very special guest on the podcast. We have Russell McDonald, also known as Russ. Russ grew up in Minnesota, began hunting when he was young, hunted rabbits, squirrels, ducks, grouse, deer, pretty much anything they could. Russ joined the Navy when he was young, graduated, and ended up, Russ joined the Navy once he graduated, ended up in the Navy for a while, and ended up in California. And that's when he kind of got back into hunting when he was 40. He was watching turkey hunting videos, hunting shows, kind of sparked an obsession with turkeys, and took that obsession to Washington, where he got involved with the Lake Washington NWTF chapter, National Wild Turkey Federation. And that involvement has led him to where he's at now, being president of the South Sound Strutters and the state of Washington NWTF chapter. So with that, Russ, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
For sure. Well, to get us started here, Russ, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Maybe start with growing up hunting, what that looked like, and how old you were when you started.
The funny thing is a lot of people ask me this, and I kind of come up with this thing of saying, the Robertsons from Duck Dynasty, and I say, well, that was my family in northern Minnesota without the long beards and the $1 million. We grew up, fishing and hunting for just about everything. My dad worked in iron ore mines of northern Minnesota, and a lot of times in the winter that slowed down. So sometimes that hunting and fishing sustained us. I mean, that's kind of, I grew up, doing that. There was never turkeys back there in Minnesota when I grew up. I mean, I was saying I got a daughter that's older than both of you guys. So I mean, that kind of ages me a little bit. But back in Minnesota, I mean, now there's tons of turkeys back there, and there never was when I was back there. But that's kind of, getting into that. And then kind of got in the Navy after I graduated, and I kind of dropped out of hunting a little bit. So I was with my first wife, got rid of that mistake, as I call it. And then about 40, I thought, I kind of miss hunting. And I met my current wife, and hopefully the only wife I'm going to have now. And, I'm like, what is there hunting? Because I was in California, Northern California, the Oroville area. And everybody knows Oroville because of the dam. But that area had, I didn't want to hunt deer because black-tailed deer were about the size of German shepherds. And I'm used to growing up in northern Minnesota with big whitetails. I mean, my first white-tailed deer at 12 years old was over 200 pounds.
Ooh.
So actually, I'll send you guys a picture of that one.
Okay.
But it was a big, as we call in the the Midwest, it was a big old black swamp buck. So and that was my first big game at 12 years old, where I could legally hunt big game. And I couldn't shoot small deer. I mean, and then I found out, hey, there's turkeys around here, and nobody's there to teach me turkeys. I kind of knew a little bit about the NWTF, and I'm like, what can I learn? And I found this, again, dating myself. I found some VHS tapes of a guy named Mikey Waddell. I'm sure you guys know him. And I kind of was watching those. I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool. And I went out and bought some calls. I was sitting there working one day, and a guy came up, business. He was cell phones, and part of our company did cell phones. And he was saying, hey, does anybody hunt here? And of course, they point to me. I'm working on a cop car on two-way radios. And he says, well, that guy over there hunts. So the guy walks up to me. He's in agriculture, a prune orchard. He comes up to me. He says, hey, you hunt turkeys? I said, no, but I want to. And he's like, I got turkeys. They're ruining my prune orchard. Can you shoot them all? I'm like, I look at him. I say, you got to be kidding. Somebody's pranking me. I'm like, he says, no, here's the key to the gate. Just give me a call when you come out. So cool. I went out there with some calls and listened to set up this blind, homemade blind. And lo and behold, the roost was behind me across the river. And I'm listening to these hens yelp. I've never heard it before in my life. I'm thinking, well, those are turkeys. So I started listening to them and imitating them on a slate call. So pretty soon I'm not getting no response. They're not talking to me. So I'm pretty soon I finally get the cadence and the ear down and the tone. And I'm like, hey, these guys are talking to me now. So we talk back and forth. And I see a turkey fly into the orchard. And I found out those things are very fast when they hit the ground. And they're like, when they're flying, they're like, mini drones. They're that big. I mean, they got a 6-foot wingspan. Yeah. But once they hit the ground, I think that it reminded me when I first saw him in running, he reminded me of the Roadrunner. There was dust kicking up behind him and he's just flying. I'm like 100 yards away. I'm like, I ain't going to take a shot. So he's about way in front of me, about 100, 150 yards. I just do one strike across that, one yelp across that slate call, and he stops, turns straight at me and starts running straight at me. Stops at about 30 yards and starts looking at me like, hey, there's something there. I don't know what it is. But before that, I'm like, I'm going like, oh shit, he's running towards me. So I got to get ready. I'm throwing all this stuff around and I pick up my gun and I'm aiming it. And he stops in front of me as I'm looking at him. I'm saying, that's a turkey. And then I just dropped the hammer on him. There you go. Right. That's what all started the craze and the addiction of turkey hunting. So.
That is so awesome. Heck yeah.
What a cool experience too. And it's almost like God opened up the gates for you on your first turkey.
Mikey Waddell, he'll say it, and you look back at some of his videos, and if he talks about turkey hunting, he says it's an addiction. And it truly is. It really, turkey hunting is an addiction. I hunt and I fish. I hunt deer, I hunt elk. I get the quad license every year in the state of Washington: deer, elk, bear, and cougar. Mm-hmm. I actively hunt deer and elk. But if I was to give up anything, I'd give up all that and never for turkey hunting. You say I'd be old and in a wheelchair, but you'd still be wheeling me out there in a blind somewhere to turkey hunt. Yeah. Everything else will go to the wayside. Turkey hunting will never go away from me.
For sure. I totally agree. I've hunted turkeys, and there's just something different. There's something different about hunting a turkey versus hunting any kind of big game animal. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead, Keaton.
I was gonna say, it's very. I found Russ at the Puyallup Sportsman Show, and I've only been turkey hunting like once or twice, and his presentation was absolutely awesome. So it's really cool to hear these stories about your success and kind of how you got into it, and it gives me like hope that I eventually will be successful when I'm out hunting turkey. But yeah, we'll keep on rolling there. But I just wanted to share that was a good story.
I got into that, growing up. I grew up with a younger brother, like a year younger than me. So if you ever grown up with a brother in a hunting family, right, it's like, who's got the biggest fish, deer? Yep. It's a competition. And right now it's kind of this is where I've gotten in the last 5 years or so, is teaching other people to hunt turkeys is my biggest thing. But I tell stories about me deer hunting and everything else, but it's passing that on. I've gotten to the age, it's like I feel more satisfied in helping somebody else be successful than I am in being successful. I mean, it took me 7 years to get my first bird in the state of Washington, but I can guarantee you I helped 20 people get their first bird before I got mine.
Yeah.
So I mean, I felt more satisfied, and I felt that I was successful in my, even though I didn't get anything, I felt more successful in my season by helping somebody else get their bird before I could.
Yeah, that's awesome. And sitting on like a comparison with you is, I understand, well, me and Kyle probably both can understand, like we all love, like me and him, we love fly fishing, right? And we love taking people out. And at the end of the day, there's just nothing that compares to helping other people be successful in something that you also have like a crazy passion for. So
seeing that smile on their face when even if they don't shoot at a bird. I mean, I had 2 guys out last year, and they didn't know, but I know right where the roosts are on his private property, and I set them up about 60-70 yards off it. And as the day was starting to get a little brighter, pretty soon them birds were getting vocal, and they're like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, I'm sitting there talking to them real nice and soft as they're up in roost, because you don't want to be over calling. And then it's like I keep on saying, if you get the chance to actually hear turkeys on the roost, it's incredible. They just start out really soft, but they get to a point where they're about ready to fly down, and it's like a Ted Nugent concert. It's incredibly loud, and those guys were just mesmerized. I actually had to say, "Hey, look up," and you could actually see the birds up in the tree, and they weren't successful because, of course, when they flew down, they flew the opposite way, and they never came back to us. But yeah, they're like, the funny thing is those guys actually went out hunting on their own when I had to go home. They're like, "Well, we're going to stay and hunt on our own and on some other land." I'm like, "Go for it."
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about when you told us about when you got your first turkey and now you're taking other people out. What did it look like between getting your first tom to taking other people out and moving to Washington? How much longer did you hunt turkeys in California?
From that first turkey, I was lucky enough, the next 3 years, I got a turkey every single spring. And so it was 3 years. That third tom I got, it just so happened I got laid off from my job. I'm an electronic technician. That's what I learned in the Navy. And I was working at a two-way radio shop, and they laid me off. And I was thinking, I need to find a job. I need to find a job out of California. So luckily enough, when I got laid off, it just so happened to be turkey season. So I'm like, I got a lot of turkey hunting in during that time. And that last tom I had was the very last one I actually had in California. And then I moved up to Washington, and I found out, hey, I started going to NWTF banquets in California, in Northern California. Gridley actually was where I was, in Orville. Chapters, those were the 2 chapters. And then when I went up to Washington, I sought out the first NWTF. I'm like, hey, man, I got to get, go to a couple of these banquets, get in with these guys. And then from that point on, I was trying to be successful. And then they said, I signed up like the second banquet I went to. I signed up, they were asking for help. I said, yeah, I help out. I'm into this. This sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe I'll get some pointers on where there's turkeys here in the state of Washington, because I'm not having any success.
Yeah.
So they call me up like a week, I'd say a month before their next banquet. So when they call me up, I say, hey, you want to help out? I'm like, heck yeah, I'll come help out. I go to a meeting, and I come out of that meeting as the vice president of the chapter. I'm like, I was just going there to help, and all of a sudden I'm the vice president of this chapter. So I'm like, and that's kind of where it took off from there. Is I got in with it, and then I actually went to a leadership thing that the NWTF put on. I actually went back to Edgefield headquarters, Edgefield, South Carolina, with no other than Rich. Me and him both went back. And that's when I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then they talked about mentor hunting and everything. I'm like, wow. And then, of course, knowing Rich and him being into the mentor hunting too. And so that's kind of where the teaching people how to hunt, kind of building off what I learned as a kid growing up, because we all had to have hunter ed, before we can hunt big game. Funny thing is, after I took my hunter education, that game warden decided not to do hunter education anymore. So what happened? My mom and dad and friends of ours decided to take over the hunter ed course. So me and my brother, of course, were involved in hunter education and teaching kids then, and being a kids ourselves. And that's kind of building on that now. Is having that passion of us always wanting to hunt, always wanting to fish, now to pass that on to other people. That's the biggest thing, that my passion to teach other people how to hunt, to pass the heritage along, I guess you call it.
Yeah,
for sure. Sorry, Keaton, I just want to say I totally agree with that. I mean, similarly, my dad taught hunter education. I took hunter ed through that course, and then I went with my dad pretty much every time he taught hunter ed, and just being so involved with that teaching drives me to want to teach others. I never considered that being part of why I wanted to teach others and guide others in the outdoor industry, or just in the outdoors. And I think a lot of that stems from being involved in hunter education, even though I would help my dad teach it every once in a while, but just being in that environment really promotes you wanting to go out and help others and get others involved with something you really enjoy.
Yeah. Well, that is another hat I wear too. I am a certified hunter ed instructor for the state of Washington too. So I actually teach that also on top of all the other stuff I teach.
Busy guy.
That's awesome.
So you go to join, you go to a meeting, you walk out as a vice president. What did this role, where did this role take you? What does your local chapter do for for Turkey and Washington State? Can you just elaborate a little bit on that? What do you guys do? Just all that.
Well, I mean, originally when it started out, vice president, and the chapter I was in was Lake Washington. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing is the chapter was more like, hey, we wanted a banquet, banquet, have fun, have drink, get drunk, whatever, buy stuff, win guns. But, then I'd like, hey, there's more to this. I think, why I started looking into it. Why are we raising this money? And the raising this money was conservation. And the biggest thing is, being in Western Washington, it's like, there's no turkeys over on Western Washington. What are we raising money for? I mean, a lot of the money we raised for was habitat on the east side, but also a lot of that money was used for outreaches, for like teaching kids, our Jake's program, or women in the outdoors, is teaching those people. And that's where the teaching part came out, is passing that on, teaching kids, hey, there's more than, that cell phone or that Nintendo, or teaching ladies, hey, your husband doesn't have to be or your boyfriend doesn't have to be the only one that hunts. You can go out and do it too. Here's the tools to use to go and do that. Yeah. So that's kind of that path that we went down. And the president of the chapter said, hey, maybe you should, come to a state chapter a meeting, let's go to that. And it was in Yakima. I got involved. I think the second meeting, I think I walked out as the secretary of that state chapter. And then it just kind of grew from there. I became the vice president and then the president, which has been going on 6 years now. And of course, at the state level, the local chapter level, we raise money, and that money goes to the state part, and that money that's raised, the state gets to pick where that money's going to. We'll have an NWTF biologist come to us. He'll get projects, here's a project from the Forest Service. We'll give you an example. Colville comes to us a lot of times and say, hey, can you partially fund back burns, burning habitat, which Colville, of course, is the turkey capital of Washington, that northeast corner up there. So we'll actually put money towards funding burning, the Forest Service burning that public land and growing that habitat, and then also funding, weed control and replanting native seed and stuff in there. That's a lot of what we do. It's just not the Forest Service, although Forest Service is probably our number one, customer, NWTF, that we work with a lot, but we've done a lot for the DNR too. And also the White Oaks Associate down on the Columbia River. But we're in the state level, we're the ones that vote where that money goes to. And putting, boots on the ground. We also provide boots on the ground for any type of projects that need to be. And we conjure up, try to drum up the boots on the ground from locals, people or whatever, NWTF members from anywhere in the state, which we have in the past, but we're trying to drum up that PR. I mean, like, it's funny. In the 6 years that I've been the president, since actually COVID has hit, my name has gotten out there more and more recognition in the last 2 years than it has in the last 6 years. I mean, it's totally strange. I'm like, prior to me going to Nashville, I felt like I was beating my head on a wall constantly. But all of a sudden, I'm starting to see, a little bit of, progress happening from all the stuff that I've been hammering home between me and Rich. Is just, we're constantly trying to hammer on the state and anything else we can get done. Our bios are, help us out in turkeys in this state.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think too, people forget that when you're doing, we're doing work through the NWTF and, you got the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and all those. When you do work through all that stuff, it helps everything involved in that habitat. So getting involved in NWTF, in these things, it can all be beneficial in the long run to our future of hunting and fishing in our state.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything that we do just isn't just for turkeys. I mean, for deer, for grouse. Yeah, I mean, we are actually, there was a partnership, and I don't know if that contract or MOU still exists, but we actually partnered with Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever for quite a few years. So anything that any of the three did, that would benefit any of those species of game that we hunt. I mean, we all need to work together. That's the biggest thing. People out here, it's a funny story. People out here, when they hear NWTF, what's the first thing you think of with the NW?
Northwest Turkey Foundation.
Yes, Northwest. Exactly. I'm constantly correcting, but I mean, people ask me, well, what does the Turkey Federation do? What is it all about? I said, well, you know what Rocky Mountain Elk and Ducks Unlimited is? We're just that for turkeys. That's how I got to explain it. I mean, and then the light clicks on. If you just say, well, we do habitat stuff for turkeys, they're not like registering, what do you do? But they know Rocky Mountain Elk and Ducks Unlimited out here. So
Yeah.
I tell them that, they're like, hey, now we understand.
It all clicks.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you. If I want to do, is there a way for me to get involved in like hands-on habitat restoration if I live on the west side of the mountain? And then if I can't make that drive over, what's your best recommendation for a person to get involved and help turkey, if they like hunting and they just don't have the time to take off and drive over there? So
join the NWTF for turkeys. I mean, unfortunately, I working with the state, and I have been for the last 6 years, is trying to change the population or trying to get more birds over on this side. I mean, basically not throwing the state under the bus, but they said they're not going to bring any more birds into the state of Washington. Actually, they have too many birds, not here on the west side, but as a population as a whole in the state, they actually have approximately 30,000 birds in this state, which is actually, the population of birds is incredible. It's compared to the Southeast, their population is really going down. I mean, that's all I heard in Nashville is they're worried about the population of turkeys. I kind of laugh. I'm like, we're not worrying about that. We're worrying about getting rid of half of them.
Yeah.
And the big thing is people ask me about turkeys and the habitat over here on the west side. The problem is the birds will survive themselves, but the hatches don't. The clutches, as they call them, that's when hens lay the eggs. It's too cold and wet during the spring. You need to kind of have that warmer spring in order for them eggs to hatch.
Yeah.
And of course, over here, the species over here in the southwest part of the state are Easterns. So the general kind of give you a synopsis of the state of Washington and turkeys. We have 3 of the 4 subspecies of turkeys in the country.
Oh, wow.
We have Merriam's, which is our largest population of birds. We have Rio Grandes, and then we have Easterns. The 4th one in the United States would be Osceolas, which are only found in Florida. So we have 3 of the 4, in which you can get what they call a Washington Slam if you get the 3. But another kind of give you a general idea of population, I said about 30,000 total birds in the state. I'm just going to, general numbers. I could be off, but out of those 30,000, you figure there's about 20,000 Merriams in this state. The Merriams are mainly in the northeast corner. The East Cascades basically from the Oregon border all the way up to Canada. The Eastern Cascades has birds.
Wow.
The southeast corner has Rio Grandes. So I figure about 5,000 to 7,000, somewhere in that range, maybe even close to 10,000. I mean, I was on fires out there last year and I saw a lot of birds. And then the Easterns that are in the Southwest, about 300 to 600 birds. I mean, they really truly don't know because they're in thick timber and you really can't, they don't have a good count on them. But you're talking about 3% of the populations are Easterns in the Southwest state. So,
wow.
I did not.
But yeah, the big population is Merriam's in the state, and they have become nuisance birds. And we've asked them that, hey, can we trap them and relocate them? Because we have ideas of where a good place would be to go to, so they're not, nuisance birds on farmers or in cities. I mean, you could go to Spokane right now, right in the middle of town, and watch turkeys run right through the middle of town. Yeah. They're kind of taking over Spokane, actually. But yeah, we've asked them to do that. But I mean, again, I go back to beating my head on a brick wall sometimes.
What would you guys do with like relocation? Like what would be your plan? Would you bring them to the west side? Would you move them to different parts of Eastern Washington? Kind of like just chatting about a daydream right there? Or?
No, you're not actually. About 5 years ago, me and the NWTF bio sat down with the heads of small game and talking to their bios and stuff. And we actually had a plan that was written out, SOP to trap and relocate birds. And we actually talked about possibly bringing over some Merriams to the west side, like maybe more of the northwest, where there really wasn't a population of birds for easterns, not natural plants up there.
Yeah.
But we talked about that, and then turnover within the state, and that got circular filed, so it never came to fruition. I mean, unfortunately, and I've brought it up plenty of times, and it's just we would like to see more birds over here. Again, it has to be with habitat and how we can sustain the hatch of the birds. I mean, the birds themselves will live. They can survive over here. I mean, Easterns and Merriams are hardy birds. I mean, Merriams live in the mountains of Montana and Colorado and stuff, and high mountain birds. And then Easterns live, heck, they're in Minnesota, almost all the way up to where I grew up in Minnesota. So they can live in the cold. That's no big deal. But I found out that poults, which are baby chicks, I guess, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. But poults, if they get wet, being as young as they are, they need to be dried off within an hour, or they are going to die of hypothermia. That came from an end. I think I was listening to a podcast on NWTF bio. He was talking about that. He's saying, if they don't get dried off within an hour, they will die of hypothermia.
Wow.
So that's the biggest thing out here in the West. Look at where we're at. We're at March 1st. I mean, what kind of rainfall have we gotten since Sunday? Right, over 5 inches of rain here in Enumclaw. I mean,
crazy.
Yeah, and unfortunately, right, this is starting to get into end of March, first part of April starts getting into a little bit of that. The flocks start breaking up, and they're starting to get a little bit frisky, and they're looking at mating and all that stuff. So, for being wet out here, I mean, we're in the Pacific Northwest. What does it do all spring? Wait 5 minutes, maybe the weather will change.
Exactly. I mean, we usually get all 4 seasons in one day in the spring. So
exactly,
it's crazy. So we chatted about conservation and stuff. Let's get into talking about hunting. What if I had no idea how to hunt turkey? Where's the best place to start and go kind of build off that and go from there?
Well, I mean, you found one place. Go to your local sporting, events or whatever, like the Puyallup Sportsman Show, or you have the Northwest one down in Portland. A lot of times, there's people there that talk about turkeys. Videos. I was self-taught. I guess I'll self-promote myself. I do, besides me and Rich Man, who lives in Yakima, we're kind of the two that teach the most about turkey hunting. We have seminars and stuff that do it. I have, besides teaching at the Puyallup Sportsman Show, I got a couple other, classes that I'll actually teach basic turkey hunting. I'll get in depth on it, but I want to teach the basic tools of how to get out there and go turkey hunting.
Yeah.
I don't think we put it on YouTube, but we actually did a full on YouTube. I think we actually did it on Zoom, and then I converted it over to YouTube. But we did a whole seminar on Zoom last year during the pandemic. We did a virtual one. So anybody ask me, I'll gladly send that out. We do. It was me and Rich Man and a couple other people that did it. But other thing is get on your local hunting forums. I'll once again, I'll self promote. I am a moderator on Hunting Washington, and people can get on there. I hear people that are first time turkey hunters all the time, and I welcome anybody, any questions, and I go full bore on helping them out without no question. I mean, just so happened that I was doing that just before we got on. I was on the forum talking to some guy that was asking about sitting and turkey calling and stuff, and so there's a lot of good people. I mean, that Washington hunting forum, it's Hunting Washington, is actually one of the largest hunting forums in the country. I mean, we got something like 20,000+ members there.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's another good source. Other sources, if you want to go out there as first time turkey hunters, call up the state bios, biologists, federal bios, talk to those guys. I mean, they can put you on, where the turkeys might be. Of course, if you're not as old as me, you got to go through Hunter's Ed. And if you guys want to go through my class, you can. Excuse me.
Oh, you're all good.
But I talk about turkey hunting in my Hunter's Ed too. So I let everybody know. Answer questions there too. So that's another avenue. I mean, the other thing in the state of Washington is not just the state biologists. Go to the state nuisance specialists. I started telling people about this, that they are probably one of the best contacts, because actually they have a list of people, especially in the northeast part of the state or Klickitat or the southeast. They actually have a list of people that call up constantly and say, hey, we need to do something with these turkeys. And a lot of those private landowners might be open to letting people hunt on their land to get rid of their turkey problem. I mean, that's another good thing. It's just kind of finding your way around there. The other thing is use Onyx maps. Use I've virtual scouted before I go out there, because I'm with you, Keaton. I live out here on the west side. That's a 3+ hour drive for me to go out there, to go hunting, but I still do it. I mean, opening weekend, I got like almost 8 people in a 5-day stretch. I'm going to first time turkey hunters I'm taking out. So
yeah, that's cool
for sure.
Well, that's like, that's like the tough thing is getting over there, or, the reason I asked that question earlier is like, how do I, help with preserving our turkey, and how do I find out how to hunt these turkey if I'm, miles and miles away. So, but yeah.
You were talking about like the nuisance specialists. That's actually how I got an in with a guy on the Klickitat several years ago. I can't remember who I emailed, Park Fish and Wildlife, and they're like, hey, thanks for reaching out. We'll forward you to somebody. And then that person emailed me like, hey, we got this guy who just absolutely hates all the turkeys on his property, and he needs somebody to come take care of a few of them. And that turned into a relationship where I went to his property every spring, and I shot at least one tom off of his property. And then back when there used to be a draw for the fall tag in Klickitat, I went down there and shot one in the fall. And that was probably the best way for me to like get into turkey hunting in Washington. I'd done the public land game. My dad and I were self-taught. It was a struggle learning, being self-taught, but once we kind of got that in, talking to using all of our sources and all of these different platforms to find where to go, who to talk to. That was kind of the best way to really get into the sport and really get involved and learn more about turkey hunting, was being able to talk to that nuisance specialist.
I think the biggest thing is I was lucky on my first hunt for turkey. I got a turkey my first time out. So it's getting that hook into somebody. That's why the relationship I got with a private landowner owner in the northeast corner of the state that I go to every year, and I bring hunters out. My success rate there is like 80 to 90% that I've come away with somebody getting a bird off that property.
Mm-hmm.
And getting them hooked. That's the biggest thing. If you can get right away success, you guys fishing at setting that hook. I mean, they're hooked after that. I mean, I took out a good example. I took out an Air Force vet. Just so happened he was from Minnesota too. I didn't know him. He's much younger than me, but I took him out. He got his first 2 birds ever on that property, and now he's coming back to be a mentor with me this coming spring. So he's actually going to teach other people how to turkey hunt. I think that's kind of cool, kind of convert people over. He's hunted before. I mean, he's a grouse hunter, and he's hunted deer back home in Minnesota, but not so much here. But teaching them people, it's not just, hey, this is hunting. It's sustainability. It's organic meat, but it's also, hey, you should really not just take, it's also give back. So that you can take from the land, but you also got to give back too. So that's a big thing.
Oh, for sure. So if somebody, well, I guess let's take some of your hunters that you're mentoring. What kind of gear are you suggesting people just getting into hunting? What's the basic setup somebody needs? Like, if somebody's coming up to you at a show, or maybe what you mentioned at a show, if I'm on a budget and I want to go turkey hunting this spring, like, what are just the essentials that I would need to buy?
The biggest thing with turkeys, kind of getting into a little bit of biology of a turkey, their number one sense is their eyesight. NWTF Bio told me this like 5-6 years ago when I went to that leadership course. They said the turkey's eyesight is equivalent to us reading a book at 100 yards. That's how well they can see. Plus they can see in color. So the biggest thing I tell them, camo head to toe, gloves, face mask, and it doesn't matter what kind of camo. Go buy some cheap stuff at Walmart. That's how I started out. Cheap stuff at Walmart, real tree or mossy oak, $5 pants and a shirt or jacket. It didn't matter. Now, of course, I got nothing but expensive stuff. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. Camo is something that breaks up your outline. Camo is good. One thing I'll tell people is do not wear red, white, or blue, only because that is the colors in a tom's head, red, white, or blue. So a lot of times you get people that, get a little excited and they see that color and they may just not shoot and not realize what they're shooting at. So the recommendation is never wear red, white, or blue.
Yeah.
Camouflage, head to toe, face mask, hat, gloves, the whole gambit. And like I said, it doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's something that I don't think a lot of people think about. The colors that, you think you see a turkey, it's brown, but they got a lot of other colors involved in them. And I honestly, I didn't even think about, if you wear like a little bit of red or white or blue, and a lot of more people are going to be probably out turkey hunting than deer hunting. And when the opportunity arises, they could shoot at you. I mean, You hear stories all the time of people getting shot at just because they weren't sure, or they saw something move, or they saw a color out of their eye. It's pretty crazy.
It actually happened to a hunter ed instructor. Of course, being a hunter ed instructor, we hear about a lot of incidents that happen. And this was a local hunter ed instructor in the northeast corner. Him and his buddy were hunting, and they were separated back to the typical, when you set up, not in a ground blind or whatever, you put your back to a big tree and you set up a decoy out in front of you in the spring if you want, and you call. Just so happened a son and dad were out, and dad saw movement and told his son to shoot. Well, he shot in between those two, and one guy got pellets in the neck and the other guy got pellets in the shoulder. And no serious, none of them, they weren't seriously hurt. I mean, they're picking lead out and it hurt like hell, but yeah, a perfect example. It's just the guy saw movement and pulled his kid to shoot. I mean, know what you're shooting at before you pull that trigger, because once you pull that trigger, you can't take it back.
Yeah,
100%. So besides clothes and make sure you're camo head to toe, what else? What other kind of gear does somebody need?
Well, of course, we'll go with you need something to shoot with to shoot and get your turkey. So the funny thing is, 12 gauge, 20 gauge, I'll promote it. I'm using a 410. I've used a 410 this spring and this fall, and talk about a fun shooting gun and super quiet. I also, you can use a crossbow or a regular bow. Those are also good. Other gear would be, of course, calls, because when I go into my class, a lot of times I'll ask people if they're hunters, if there's hunters in my class, and I'll get a good mix of people that are hunters. And I'll ask if there's turkey hunters there, and that's not that many, but there are a lot of, I ask, are there elk hunters? There are actually a lot of elk hunters. And then I go into the fact is, are you archery hunting? And some are. And I said, well, if you archery hunt, then you've actually turkey hunted, because, turkey hunting in the spring and hunting elk in the rut are almost the same thing, because they're vocal. You're acting like a cow a lot of times, or another, you're doing cow calls or you're doing hen yelps. So that's one attractant. You can gobble to get shock gobble, or bugling like an elk. Mm-hmm. But you're also going after the lead, either the most dominant tom or the head elk in the herd. So I say it's virtually the same thing. A lot of people don't agree to it, but I mean, it kind of is. The one thing is, the only difference is you got a much lighter pack out when you're turkey hunting. So.
Yeah,
and some other things would be, calls. Of course, you want to have calls, because in the spring, that's when they're vocal. So
yeah,
I can tell people, I usually at the sportsman shows or at my classes, there's 2 calls within probably less than 5 minutes. I can have you sounding like a turkey, and that's a slate, which is a pot and peg or a slate call, and a box call. Those are probably the 2 easiest calls to learn, and also good to have in your vest and arsenal. The third one's a mouth diaphragm, probably the hardest to learn, but I think I tell everybody you should learn how to do it, because like I said, turkey's vision is their number 1 sense. So if you have your turkey closing in on you, you can't really be sitting there scratching a pot call, or, cutting on your box call or your pot call. That all involves motion. And plus, how do you hold up your gun when you're trying to, scratch on your pot call or cut on your box call? You can't. So you have that diaphragm in your mouth, and you can make noise with that. You can yelp or cut or whatever with that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the big three that I have in my vest when I go out. I mean, I carry other stuff because I'm, showing people what other calls that you may utilize while you're out in the field. But my number one that I use extensively is a mouth call. I very seldom bring out a pot call. Very seldom will bring out a box call unless I'm out there on property or land that I don't know, and then I'll bring out that box call, because that box call is huge volume with very long distance. So you can get shock gobbles just by, cutting up on a box call or doing some really loud yelps or whatever. But for me, 100%, because I got a lot of hot air in me. I could get pretty loud on a mouth diaphragm call. So almost 100%. I always got a mouth call in my mouth.
Yeah. I had a question for you. What do you use blinds at all, and do you find them effective on public land, or do you use them mostly on private land, or do you use them on both? Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on blinds?
You guys are reading my mind, because that's what I was going to go into next, is mention the blinds. Blinds are super good. I think 100% awesome on private land, because you can set them up and forget them.
Mm-hmm.
And also a good thing if you have kids, right? If you're teaching kids or you have your kids with you, you can move a lot more in a blind because it's not as visible. Public land, it's not that bad. You can set up the blind day of, and it's not going to bother a turkey as long as you're broke up enough.
Yeah.
The problem is you don't want to set it up the night before unless nobody's trekking out there, because you go there in the morning and you got somebody set up in your blind. I mean, it's a possibility, but I mean, you probably should know your area and thinking that nobody's going to be around. That's the game of public, hunting. Sometimes you set up a tree stand or whatever, and you come the next day and find out somebody's up your tree stand. Unfortunately, it's public land and it's open to everybody. So, I mean, it's either saying, hey, that's my tree stand, or you just, okay, it's your game, whatever, and you walk away. But
yeah.
But that's some of the stuff you got to deal with when it's public land. But I have quite a few blinds, different colors, different sizes, all great. I've hunted out of them turkey hunting, especially when I have people that might have mobility issues, people that can't sit still. I mean, it's good because when you go out turkey hunting, sometimes if you're sitting out, up against a tree or whatever, sometimes you're sitting there for a while. So you can't really move when you're out in the open out there if you got turkeys around you. So having that blind, you can set up in a fairly decent chair inside it. And a lot of times I can fall asleep in it, take a nap in the middle of the day, eat some food. But yeah, but blinds are super good. But there again, you're starting to get into the higher end of turkey hunting. They're not cheap. I mean, you can get cheap blinds. I would not recommend them because they just kind of fall apart.
Yeah. Do you, when you set up your blind, do you feel like you have to gather some brush around it, or are turkey not as affected by that?
They're not like deer.
Yeah.
They're not as affected by having that out there, unless you put it right in front of their travel path,
Yeah.
which I have a tendency when you set up blinds, you kind of want to set up blinds just like you do if you're setting up on a tree. You kind of don't want to be silhouetted. You kind of want to set it back out. It has a backdrop, but trees back behind you or something. Don't just set it out in the middle of the field in the middle of nowhere. And that might be a little more obvious, but you definitely they don't like a deer. If you set up something out there, a deer's going to look at it for like 3 days and avoid it. Now at turkey, I've seen turkeys. Virtually. We set up the blind. It happened to be the Tianaway, which is I got drawn for this fall, and we set up the blind that morning, and we had 60 birds walk in on us, and that blind wasn't there. I mean, so they didn't care.
Yeah, I got one more question since we're kind of on the gear train. I've heard attractor calls work for turkey. Can you kind of explain like what an attractor call could be and how it could benefit a turkey hunter?
So toms basically gobble at anything. I mean, I never heard of a tractor call, but I could tell you can hoot owls, coyote calls, peacock calls, honking your horn, slamming your car door. I mean, you could holler and yell. Elk. I've actually had elk cow calls, and bugles where I've had turkeys bugling at me, or turkeys not bugling, gobbling at me.
Yeah.
But they respond to a high pitch or loud repetitive noise. So I don't know if it's just tractor call. I don't know what that is.
All right, like a locator call. My bad. I meant like a locator call. Still new to the turkey game.
Well, I just named off all them locator calls. That's exactly it. Hoot owl, crow call. That's another one. I have a guy that uses peacock calls quite a lot. The funny thing is I have a hoot owl call, but I won't even use it. I actually use my own voice to, just, and then I get turkeys gobbling at me. So
yeah, that's really cool.
The goose call. Some guys even use a goose call. I mean, a couple of years ago, no turkeys would gobble at all until the geese started going off, and then the turkeys were gobbling.
It was like their sign or something.
Yeah, I know. They respond to whatever they feel like. I mean, they won't respond to any hen yelps, but a goose going off, yeah, they're going to gobble at them.
Yeah, crazy.
I've had days on that property down there on the Klickitat where we're close to the road, and like I'm sitting waiting for daylight, and every time a car drives by on the road, boo! And then another car drive by, boo! Or like you hear a door slam, like any little noise that was not natural, boo! Just constant, nonstop.
I went on a guided hunt down there. I had bought a guided hunt, and I ended up giving it to my son-in-law, but I took a bunch of other first-time turkey hunters out. And I was actually there to film it more than anything, and I didn't film a damn thing. But the funny thing is the Klickitat has so much cattle down there. When the cows started mooing, we heard birds gobbling at the damn cows.
Wow.
Like, yeah, there's another new thing. Moo like a cow, and you'll get a turkey to gobble at you.
That's crazy.
That's awesome. So you talked a little bit, Russ, about your fall tag in the Tianaway. Talk to us a little bit about the difference between your spring season versus your fall season in Washington.
That's a good question, and that's actually quite good. People ask me that a lot. Spring hunting, of course, spring is their mating season, so of course you're going to get more of the active toms, more of the gobbling, they're more receptive to hen calling, whereas in the fall, and they're broke up into smaller flocks in the spring. You're talking the biggest flock you might see is maybe 30, but they'd be more like, 10 to 20 in a flock. Whereas in the fall, they tend to gather up and they're just together to feed. So in the northeast corner, if you go into some of the hay fields up at Davenport, it's like nothing to see 1,000 birds in one field.
Wow.
So that you're talking big flocks. I mean, you brought up the good example. I've hunted that Teanaway tag, and it's private property that we're hunting, and the guy's got a postage stamp like 5 acres, but he has 80 plus birds roosting outside his back porch, and they don't go anywhere. They stay there. They've been there for the last I've been hunting there 7 years. I mean, they don't go nowhere. It's not the same bird 7 years, but the birds keep on staying there. But in the fall, they're just in a lot bigger packs. They're not gobbling. I mean, you're hearing more of hens, more of the juveniles. The toms do strut, because I did get a nice tom on that Teanaway tag, and it was in full strut, 30 feet in front of the blind. So. Yeah. So they do strut, and they will gobble, but I mean, it's more of excited, you caught him off guard type gobble. He's like running up a hill, and like you scared the crap out of him, and he's like, and he's running uphill. Yeah. But he's not gobbling to attract a hen.
So earlier you were kind of comparing elk hunting and turkey hunting, especially like spring season when they're gobbling, and the archery elk tag. How would you compare that fall turkey where they're not as vocal? Would you kind of compare that to, say, hunting elk in like the rifle season or a later season where they're not talking?
No, fall season, I call it more of trying to shoot fish in a barrel. I mean, it's almost like that. I mean, turkeys can be dumb. They are dumb during the fall. They really don't give a rip about anything. They just kind of walk nonchalantly around. They don't really care. A perfect example is farmers. I mean, the farmers, they're not wearing any camo or nothing. They can virtually walk right up to the turkey and smack it in the head, or they come up and start pecking on you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect example is I brought out a Navy guy in the fall in the same property. I brought him out. He got his 2 birds. He filled his 4 tags. I had 2 tags left, and I was on the back tailgate of my truck showing him how to clean the birds and everything, and field dress them and actually to process them. And the owner came over and he says, "Hey, there's a whole bunch of turkeys sitting in the corral." I'm like, "Yeah, I hear them. I hear them yelping and stuff." I'm like, "No, I'm trying to teach this kid how to do this." And finally, they were raising so much hell over there. I said, I got to go over there and shut them up. So I literally had a blaze orange vest on.
Wow.
And I went over there. The thing was, any camo during that whole weekend we were there, us wearing camo, those birds would be gone as soon as they saw us. But when I walked around that corral with my blaze orange vest on, they kind of got startled, and they said, "Oh, that guy ain't got nothing to worry about." So they were still meandering around. I pulled up to the fence and dropped 2 more birds.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's awesome.
The landowner says, "Hey, in the fall, I don't know why you're wearing all that expensive camo. You just wear your blue jeans and a freaking, a black jacket or whatever. They ain't gonna pay attention to camo. They're probably gonna run from you."
Yeah,
that's funny.
Hey, I had a question. Well, it's kind of like a story, and then maybe see if you knew like the solution to it. So we're out on the Yakima last year, and I was taking a client, and he was swinging streamers in this run, and all of a sudden we hear commotion across the river, and I look up on the hillside, and it looked like an episode of like Gang Wars. like one flock of turkey was coming down the hill and another just came out of this like lower brush. And next thing you know, they start like circling, kind of doing like a half circle on each other. And then just two birds start just getting after it, like just fighting each other. And then they like both stopped and they gobbled and took off running the other ways. What is that? Just kind of a weird phenomenon that happened and I witnessed it, or is that something that is it territorial, or do you?
Was it spring?
It was October.
Really?
It was October. Yeah, we were just sitting there. I was like, oh look, there's turkey. I thought they were all together, and they like walked up to each other. They jumped on each other. They started beating each other up. And then like the gang ran off one way and the other gang ran off the other way. And the guy's like, does that happen? And I was like, I don't know.
That is kind of weird for being it was, later on in the year. In the spring, yeah, they can be, toms can be territorial because they're more of I got my flock of hens, don't come near them.
Yeah,
they're using the same analogy as elk hunting. The herd elk will protect his cows.
Yeah,
that dominant tom will protect its hens, and they will fight.
Yeah,
and that's the big thing. We go back to a little bit about decoys and using decoys. I probably didn't bring that up at all.
Yeah,
but example was I had brought out a kid from Ohio came out, was going for a double slam, and we found a place for him to hunt. And this was opening weekend, I had a full strut tom decoy out with two hens, one feeder. A feeder was one with its head down, and one alert is a hen with its head up.
Mm-hmm.
And we had two toms come in 80 yards, hung up on us, circled all the way around us. Wow. And we had birds coming in, but they would not come anywhere close to us. So about noon, I decided to sneak out there and pull that full strutting tom out of there. And then we had hens would walk right through our decoys, not 10 feet in front of the blind, and not, pay no attention. About 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm making sporadic calls because I'm not getting a lot of response. And all of a sudden over my shoulder, I hear this putting and drumming, and I freeze because it's the kid that I had out there has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And so he was there. His mom was filming, and his dad was there to help him out on the gun. And all I could do was freeze because I was behind a blind up against this huge oak tree doing the calling. And I froze because I didn't want to move and spook this bird. I knew because it was drumming, it had to be a tom. And then I could hear him in there. You see him? You see him? And I hear him moving off to my right side. And I'm not looking. I'm not calling. I'm not doing anything. And the next thing I know, I see the gun poking out the blind. And I'm like, oh yeah, come on. And then I hear him. His dad yelling, shoot him. And he says, Dad, I can't see him. Here's one thing that we've learned is your point of view to the shooter's point of view are totally different. You might be thinking that I see that bird, you got a clear shot, and that shooter's saying, I don't have a clear shot. And he actually had to clear a tree, and he dropped that bird at 38 yards.
Wow.
So it was a 410, and this was a custom Jeb's choke tubes and everything. And I think Jeb's actually made that 410, but that 410 was probably 3 feet long at best. I mean, but that thing was a turkey slayer. I mean, that kid, he's something else. You should, if you get a chance, look him up. His nickname is Critter Getter. He's probably all over YouTube and everything else. But yeah, that was pretty exciting. But we figured out that them toms hung up because that strutting tom was out there. So in the spring, with the toms fighting, they felt like, hey, that tom's there. I don't feel like getting my ass kicked, so I'm not going in anymore. So that's why they wouldn't come in. They saw that one and they're thinking, I'm not going to fight no more. I've been getting my ass kicked all this time, so I'll just give up on this and go somewhere else. So once I pulled that tom out, they were fine with the hens.
Yeah, that's a cool story. What a great opportunity, for someone with that may not have the same opportunities for us to hunt and to get to emphasize on his hunt. That's really cool.
So when it comes to decoys, real quick, I know like as a duck hunter, sometimes we have like all these different like, oh, I'm gonna have my decoys make a J, and I'm gonna have some mallards over here, and I'm gonna have some gadwalls over here, and it's gonna look like this formation that goes with the wind. Do you have any specific setup for how you set up your turkey decoys, or do you use like, do you have a hen facing this way and the tom strutting facing this way? Like what is your decoy setup? Is it as important in turkey hunting?
Normally you want it kind of yes and no. There are some specifics that you want to follow. You want to set up anywhere about 20 to 30 yards out in front of you. You never want to go, I mean, your best range for any type of gun, 12 gauge, 20 gauge, whatever, you really shouldn't be shooting beyond 30 yards. Technology of ammo can extend that range, but I mean, ethically 30 yards is probably good. You want to pretty much, the one thing in true nature is that a hen will never follow a tom always follows the hen. So you want to make it when you set up, if you set up a tom or a jake, you want to kind of have it in such a way that the tom is actually following the hen or somewhere behind it. So you don't want to spin it, although the wind could spin it around. You don't want to have the hen facing the tom. The other thing is that if a tom comes in, it's going to come face to face with another tom. It'll never, somebody may correct me down the line, but I don't think toms will come face to face. They don't really sneak up behind them. So that's another thing to think about if you're setting up a tom. You also got to look at decoys, what time of the year it is. The perfect example of if I was setting up that tom or that jake, if the mating season been going hot and heavy and the dominant toms have been kicking the crap out of the younger toms, a lot of times a full strutting tom may not be the answer. It may be, a jake. I use what they call a funky chicken. We actually gotten quite a few birds off that. The funky chicken is actually a turkey, but it's a very skinny turkey. It's a jake and it stands up real tall. And it looks funky, so thus the funky chicken. But and later on in the season, you probably want to go to nothing but hens. You probably or nothing at all.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the time of the season and how you kind of want to position your turkeys. But I'm telling you, you're probably going to ask me the type of decoys. I've had everything. I've had the foam $10 ones. My very first decoy was actually a plastic Primos blow up one that I've fallen asleep in my blind before. And when I woke up, I thought it was a turkey and almost shot my decoy. But in the foam ones, and now I have Avion X and flex tones, some flex tones that are basically like Avion X, but half the price.
Yeah.
So you can spend as little or as much as you want when it comes to decoys or anything you do with hunting. It's all the same. Turkey hunting, duck hunting. No, it's all the same. You can spend as little as you want, or you can spend as much as you want.
Yeah. For sure.
So I have a question. Kind of, we're on this gear path right now. For like a new hunter coming in, someone that's never done it. Do you mind explaining kind of what a plug and a shotgun is, and do you need one for turkey hunting?
So when it comes to plugs, it's just like duck hunting. You can only have 3 rounds. A plug is basically all shotguns. The shotgun tube will hold like 5. The plug will limit how many you can put up the tube, like 2, and then 1 in the chamber. So there's your 3 rounds. So it's no different than duck hunting. It's the same thing. The only thing is if you're hunting public land, you got to watch out. If you're some state managed land in the state of Washington, you got to use non-toxic loads, but you can shoot lead, but you can on that non-toxic areas.
Yeah.
So you can shoot lead, but that's kind of going on the wayside when it comes to turkey hunting. I mean, I think even the NWTF is starting to push non-toxic stuff. I mean, we're all in new technology. We're all using either heavy shot non-toxic or TSS loads nowadays. So I mean, that's all non-toxic shot anyway.
Yeah. Is your non-toxic shots going to be like tungsten, or like what kind of non-toxic? Just to explain it a little better for someone that might not know.
Non-toxic is basically like tungsten or TSS, tungsten super steel. Heavy shot also has a non-toxic, which is a copper plated, a combination of copper and steel, and I think some titanium in it. I'm not 100% positive, but it's all copper plated, non-toxic shot in it.
Yeah.
It's basically, lead can be poisonous to game if they eat it. So
yeah,
I mean, lead is the mainstay of shotguns. So, I mean, it's been around forever, but I mean, new technology in shot. I mean, safer for the environment, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you also got to take into consideration that most TSS loads are about $5 a shell, so they're not cheap. I mean, you can find deals. I search around for deals. I've shot heavy shot 410, super nice, because I can find more ammo for that than I can 12 and 20 gauge now. And of course, a crossbow. That's my next foray into all this spring. The crossbow's coming out, so.
Nice.
So I'm going to try that after everybody else gets their birds this this opener in the second week. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Well, Russ, we've talked a lot of great stuff about your background, NWTF, turkey conservation, how to get started, gear. Oh, sorry, Keaton has one more question for you before we move on.
I have one more thing, just so I don't think we really covered it. Where should you put your shot placement on a turkey?
Oh, good question.
So if you're shooting a shotgun, you basically want to aim right for its neck. So if you're shooting high, you'll still get a shot at the head. Also, you want to shoot at the head. You don't want to shoot at the body, because most of the meat's in it, breast meat, all that meat's in the body. So if you shoot the body with the shotgun, then you're ruining the best part of the turkey. So,
gotcha.
What about where should if I was shooting a bow, where should my shot placement be?
Again, you're reading my mind, aren't you?
Yeah.
When it comes to shooting a bow, you got a little more option there, because you're not putting big holes like a shotgun would. So your best thing is just above its drumstick or its leg, in the side. You're shooting at vitals on this bird that's probably a little bit bigger than a golf ball, but a little bit smaller than a baseball. So you're shooting at something pretty small. That you can do a full-on breast shot. You can, if it's going away from you, spine. If it's in a full fan, you can do a Texas heart shot, if you know what that means, or if you follow Deadpool at all, straight up Broadway, right up the wazoo.
Yeah.
That's another shot. But
Yeah.
there are turkey style guillotine blades that you can get for archery that you can try and take its head off, but you got to realize shooting archery, man, you better be a good shot to take it off the head, because I mean that's even smaller than going after its vitals. But you go on YouTube, there's guys out there that do it. I mean, they flop those heads over with them guillotine blades, but them blades are like 3 inches across. So I mean, you got a little bit of shooting surface there, but still have to be good at it.
Yeah, it's impressive to take a shot like that.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, continue on, Kyle. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we talked all about this gear, talked all about this stuff, and then we didn't even talk about when it comes to shooting a turkey. So I thought that was kind of a key point.
No, for sure. I think that's good point there, Keaton. I probably should have checked with you first. But yeah, kind of what we were going towards is what is important, or why are turkeys important both to you, Russ, and to the environment, the state of Washington? Why do we need to take care of turkeys? Why do we have to have conservation for
them? I think I tend to think that turkey hunting is probably, and maybe it's just me being biased, but it's a good learning on how to hunt. I think it's probably the best thing to hunt if you've never hunted before. It's not super hard, but it's not, super easy too. It's a good medium to, hey, if I've never hunted, what can I start out with? And I think that's turkey hunting. As far as it goes for habitat or conservation in this state, I think that the NWTF is probably the driving force behind turkey hunting and having that habitat and having that bird in the state that we can hunt. Example is I get the numbers every year from WDFW. In 21, we sold over 55,000 turkey tags. That does not include small game, because you got to get a small game tag in order to get a turkey tag. We calculated that out, the cost of tag. That's about $850,000 that we put into conservation of the turkeys and in the state.
Wow.
So turkeys are believe it or not, people may not think it, but they're pretty super popular in this state. I mean, we have a lot of them. We truly do have a lot of turkeys here compared to other places in the country that are yelling that they don't have enough turkeys, but we have a lot of them, and they're super fun to hunt.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. If someone wanted to get involved in the NWTF, how do they do that?
So the big thing is of course, if these guys will probably post up my contact information and stuff, contact me, or go to NWTF.org. You can look up events on the main page, or you can look up chapters in your area. Get involved with the NWTF chapter. Become an NWTF member. The big thing is if we want more turkey hunting opportunities and stuff, is having that voice. We got to have that voice. Rocky Mountain elk is huge out here. I mean, we sold 55,000 turkey tags, but we have less than 400 NWTF members in this state. I mean, have that voice that we can bring to the state that allows us more opportunities to hunt turkeys and possibly to move turkeys. So NWTF.org, or get a hold of me. Like I said, I'm the state chapter president. I can steer you in any direction that you want in the state when it comes to chapters or contact information for those chapters.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, we'll for sure throw that up there, both on our website and in our show notes, so people can click directly on that. So hopefully you can help them get more involved in turkey hunting in Washington.
Yeah. And since we're on this trend, is there any upcoming like meetings or events coming up for South Sound Strutters?
Yeah, another great question. Just so happens that I have upcoming. This is a veteran only one. It's in Yelm. When is that? The 12th of March. I won't be teaching, pretty much veterans, but they're getting such a huge response that they may open it up to non-veterans, and they may open it another. They may open up another class. I got 2 basic turkey hunting seminars at Tacoma Sportsman's Club, one on the 9th and one on the 23rd, open to anybody. They say touch bases, call Tacoma Sportsman's Club to let them know you're coming. Those are both on a Wednesday and 7:00 at night. As far as a banquet for us, October 8th here in Enumclaw, that's when we'll be. It's a long ways away, but if you're talking about other banquets within the state, Yakima is having theirs May 21st. So if you're listening from out at Yakima, we're actually, I think I'm going to be there, but Rich will be there because he's now the president of that chapter there. So that's their banquet that they're going to have, right? And I believe it's in Sela at the convention center, I think. But if you follow the podcast, I'm sure they'll put our Facebook page, and that's all posted in our Facebook page, which is South Sound Strutters or Washington State NWTF.
Yeah. I want to add too is that you'll have a bio up on our website, www.theyoungguidespodcast.com, and this will be a quick way to find all of Russ's information and information about the chapter, etc. So you'll be able to check that out too. So just head over to our website, or like Russ is saying, in our bio or Instagram, we'll have stuff up for him. So,
and I was talking to Russ before we started recording. Rich talking about how Rich was the guy that got me started in turkey hunting. And yeah, if you're in Yakima and you're in Eastern Washington, Rich is a great guy to learn from. Definitely instilled a passion in me. And I can only imagine, Russ, you were the same way. I'm just talking to you and learn more about you. I'd be super stoked to share a blind with you and pick your brain even more about hunting turkeys. This has been a great conversation, and we've really appreciated having you on.
Hey, anytime you guys are out in the area, I'll be glad to take you out. We can definitely go out in the woods and hunt some birds.
That'd be fun.
For sure. Well, is there
so just go ahead, Kyle.
No, you're good.
I was going to say, is there anything else that you think we missed that you would like to add?
Geez. No, I think that's pretty good.
Cool. I think we covered a lot of topics, and
yeah,
this is.
I just kind of looked down at the time. I'm like, holy crap, man! We've been at this for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
yeah.
This will, once you get going on this, you don't realize how much you cover, and you just kind of get conversating and stuff. So
it's best when you're just your conversation is more of a BS session. I'd like this more, not a structured type interview. Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, yeah,
for sure.
Well, sweet.
And Keaton, you want to bring us into the last little part here?
Yeah. So this is our favorite part of the podcast. I'm sure if you listen to some of our old podcasts, Russ, that you have listened to this segment. This is our rapid fire round. And we're just going to hit you with a series of questions and kind of just whatever comes first, just kind of let it flow and answer as you go. So to start off, where's your dream destination to hunt turkeys?
Probably Florida to get my Osceola.
Awesome.
Would that finish your slam?
Well, I can, Easterns are in Minnesota, so I can go back home to my sister's property, get an Eastern. It doesn't have to be here in Washington. I got other offers in other states to get Easterns, but I think that Osceola would probably be my dream turkey hunt.
Nice. Have you ever played around with the idea of going south of the border and hunting the golds down there?
Well, no, not really until I heard Steve Ranella going across over there and hunting turkeys over there. And now I'm like, oh, or Coos deer. And I'm like, in the same time they hunt golds over there. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you know what? That might be kind of interesting, but not right now. It's a far dream.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you're going out, you're getting ready for a day of hunting in the spring or in the fall. What's your favorite meal to have in the blind while you're turkey hunting? And what kind of beverage are you having with you?
Probably beverage would be Coke Zero, and probably food would be some jerky.
Nice. Oh, yeah. You're headed out. You're on your way to go turkey hunting. You hop in the truck. What is your go-to music that you're putting on before you go turkey hunting?
And listening to your podcast, I knew you're going to ask this. It's not music. I listen to Sirius XM, and it is the NASCAR channel that I'm usually listening to.
Awesome.
Nice.
I like it.
All right. You head out the door. You got your Coke Zero and you got your jerky. What's the first thing that you're grabbing besides maybe your food and your drink? What's the first thing that you're grabbing that you can't leave behind?
My diaphragm mouth calls.
Oh yeah. That's an important piece. What is the best advice that you could give someone just wanting to start hunting?
Reach out to anybody that has turkey hunted before. Don't be afraid to ask questions of whether it's calling a state biologist or contacting anybody within the NWTF. All our contact information is on NWTF.org. If mine isn't there, you can get a hold of our regional director and she'll force you over to me. But don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions. That's the biggest thing. I mean, I was never taught. We were self-taught. I mean, nobody taught me how to turkey hunt, but I relied on what I learned when I was a kid. So I knew how to hunt. So just, reaching out and finding that information through, videos or YouTube is crazy now. What would we have done in the past without YouTube or Google, nowadays? But definitely don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what's something that you wish you knew when you first started getting into turkey hunting that you wish you could go back and tell yourself in California, this is what you needed to do?
Geez, I should have waited for a bigger bird, my first bird.
That's awesome.
Was it a Jake or a young Tom or what?
It was a Jake.
Awesome.
My last bird in California, which was a Rio, it weighed about 22 pounds, about 1 inch spurs with about 9.5 inch beard. So that was the one I should have waited for.
Yeah. Holy mackerel. That's a big bird. Okay. We are at the end. We'd like to end our podcast with your favorite outdoor moment. If it's you shooting a bird, or if it's someone else getting a bird and you were along with them, or anything, funny, serious, anything along those lines, let us have it.
How much time you got? I think I think the funniest, and it revolves around hunting, but not turkey hunting. I think the funniest and the most coolest thing that I done was my deer when I was 12 years old. And it just so happened the story is I'm on my aunt and uncle's property, me and my brother hunting. He can't hunt big game. So I'm carrying my grandpa's 308. We're going down this skidder trail and we're going by this big spruce tree. I had better hearing than my brother. My brother had eagle eyes. He couldn't see around the tree, but I heard something. When we cleared that tree, there was this buck not 40, 50 yards away. Sun's to our back. And what do? I do not pull up my gun. I start jumping up and down, and I kid you not, I started screaming, "It's a fucking buck! It's a fucking buck!" And then, of course, I pulled up and drew, and it was facing right towards me. And I'm thinking, why the hell ain't this thing running? Remember what I said? The sun was to our back, and he was on a doe trail, so he didn't care. He couldn't see us. Sun was shining in his eyes. So I draw up. He's facing towards me, and there's my dad's voice in my head. Wait till it turns broadside. About 30 yards, it turns broadside. I pull the trigger, and if you ever seen shows or if you ever hunted whitetail before, they don't die. They keep running. Yeah. So this thing kept on running. So I pulled the trigger again. By that time, it was running straight at me. So it was a chest shot. Third shot, I'm shooting a semi-auto. Third shot, I totally missed. By that time I hit that third shot, I could have reached out, not fully extended my arm, and grabbed it by its antlers. That's how close it was, because it was running straight at us. And that third shot, I think it scared it because it churned before it actually hit me. And all I can remember is as it was tipping over and rolling down this small hill was I heard this bang. And I'm not understanding what I didn't shoot again. And here I am, 12 years old, and I'm trying to shoot it in the head with because it's flailing around, not realizing it's not dead yet. And I totally miss on that fourth shot. And then I'm trying to reload my magazine, and I'm shaking so bad is that my bullets are clicking on this magazine. Like I can't even put a bullet in there. And then I realized, hey, this thing's dying, right? So what does my brother do? He grabs this big, huge rock and pitches it at the head. This was a perfect 5x5, 10-point, as we call it in Minnesota. Perfect. What's he do? He breaks off the tallest tine on one side.
Oh no.
Remember when I told you I heard that bang and realizing that I didn't shoot? My brother was carrying a 410. He shot it in the ass because it was so close.
Holy shit.
And I hope he listens to this podcast too.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that really was my proudest and funnest and funniest moment. And I tell that story constantly. People are like, oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a good time. That was a big deer. I could never equal that probably ever again. Not in the deer world, but someday. 11 seasons going on that for elk. Someday I'm going to get a damn elk.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of people in that same boat.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, cool. That's a perfect story.
That's a great way to end the podcast right there. Well, cool, Russ. We appreciate you taking the time to hop on and talk to some young guides like us. And, Kyle has a little more experience than I am. I'm learning as I'm going through this podcast. So I've got out there one or two times and I haven't had my success yet, but I hopefully that me and others that listen to this podcast will be able to benefit from this and maybe change around and get successful this year. So we just want to really thank you for taking the time tonight and just hopping on and chatting with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate you guys having me on. And by the way, I am pleased as punch seeing guys your age taking on and showing the passion and showing the way to people. I mean, you don't see that very much out of your generation, and that's what makes me happy is seeing your guys' generation and the younger crowd coming out and enjoying the, not just the hunting aspect of it, but the conservation of it.
Yeah, man, that's big words. That means a lot to both me and Kyle.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. We appreciate that. All right, Keaton, let's take us out of here.
Awesome. Well, that was another episode of the Young Guides podcast. We just want to thank Russ tonight for hopping on and chatting with us about his hunting experience, about the NWTF, and just all around just sharing, everything that he can about hunting turkeys. We hope that you take away something from this, which leads to success on your turkey hunts. I also want to add just thank you, Russ, for serving our country, and anyone else who serves our country or has served our country. We really appreciate that. Without you guys, we can't do what we love here. We wouldn't be sitting on a podcast tonight. So thank you for that. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, our website. Pretty much, I would say we're on almost all podcasting platforms. Go ahead and check us out there. You can also find information about Russ, how to contact him on our website at www.theyoungguidespodcast.com. You can learn a little bit more about Russ and just kind of get to put a face to the voice behind the podcast tonight. So we really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to our podcast, give us feedback, good and bad, because that's how we grow. We can't always have 5 stars and great reviews. The dislikes and the people that give us 3 stars or tell us that, oh, I think you guys could do this better. We appreciate that a lot. We're always looking for guests too. So if you think you're a young guide or you're a outdoorsman or you got a great story, you can, we just message us through our Instagram, the Young Guides Podcast, and we can get chatting about possibly bringing you on too. So Kyle, is there anything else you wanted to add to this?
I think that wraps it up pretty well. It's been a great episode. Releasing this right before turkey season of spring 2022 in Washington. So hopefully get it out there to you guys. You guys can get some good information from Russ. And like Keaton said, try to get a turkey down on the ground. But I would also add that a lot of times hunting turkeys isn't all about killing a turkey. I've had a lot of times where just having an interaction with a tom or hearing the toms gobbling on the roost, I'm like, that's it. That's all I care about. That was awesome. Yeah. A lot of times it's not about killing the turkey. It's just having that experience. So
come on, Kyle. We all want to kill a turkey.
Oh, maybe if they're Keaton and they haven't yet.
Yeah, I'm going on a couple years. All right. I'm getting a little itchy. I've already heard him on the roost. I'm ready to get after it. So, well, awesome. We're all good, Kyle?
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Well, that was another episode of the Young Guides Podcast. Catch you on the next one.
Peace.